So, Shaun first came to our kind of first came to prominence in a close shape back in 1995. So, effectively, that it was kind of Nick Park's creation, was he? And then there was the TV show started in 2007, and there's been this kind of massive phenomenon sold all over the world.
Yeah.
I mean, can you just tell us a little bit about the decision to go from something which works very well as a kind of defined, contained 7 minutes into a proper kind of feature?
Yeah. From a company perspective, the Shaun as a character predates both Mark and I getting involved in this project. It's the original film was made by Nick, and then the character kind of grew in popularity out of that. And the kind of famous anecdote everybody talks about at the company is that Baby Spice was spotted wearing a Shaun the Sheep backpack, and that gave them the idea that maybe Shaun was quite popular and we should make a film. But first they started to talk about a TV series, and they developed the TV series for a number of years, and Nick was involved in that. But then Richard Starzak, Mark's fellow director, kind of worked on it and came up with the angle that it was a farm which was like a factory where the farmer was the boss, and the animals were the kind of everyday workers, and that was the kind of genesis of the original idea. And then he felt for a long time, he kept saying to me, we should make a film of this. I think there's a film in Shaun the Sheep. I said, I think you're crazy. They don't speak. And then Mark came along and said the same thing. We should do this. So we started working about 3.5 years ago, I guess.
And did you go and look at kind of like silent films and some of the kind of classic kind of comedy?
Yeah, we did actually. In fact, we had a thing where for a while, every it was great. It's not like it's all fun all the time at Aardman, but this does sound quite fun. Every lunchtime, once a week, we'd have a silent movie, and we would sit and watch it and just enjoy it. We were definitely, we were inspired and in awe of and influenced by silent movies, and also by the French director Jacques Tati, who made a lot of movies in the 50s, which were silent movies with sound. I think that's the thing, is that Shaun isn't really a silent movie. It's actually, we call it a slapstick comedy without dialogue, because there's non-verbal communication, which hopefully, as you've seen, can tell you a lot of things.
I mean, one thing that's interesting is a lot of the Aardman characters, like the eyebrows, make obviously are very much used to kind of bestow emotion and so forth. But Shaun doesn't have eyebrows, so that's a bit of a barrier. So does that kind of mean everybody has to work even harder when it comes to finding sort of the animation kind of?
He's got eyelids sometimes. The animators
occasionally,
they can use eyelids. I think we talk about this a lot, and I think we're very influenced by the great Nick Park in terms of. People often say that Gromit's this amazing character, which he is, but physically Gromit doesn't do a lot. But the way that Nick sets up his stories and the emotional ideas, when you cut to a shot of Gromit, you already know what he's thinking. It's all there. You reach in for those thoughts. So I think we were trying to do the same thing where sometimes you'll cut to Shaun and he'll do a little thing, but we've done half the journey hopefully and half the job with the storytelling, and then letting a little bit of subtlety with a puppet finish it off.
And animation is notoriously both expensive and very time-consuming. Because you kind of had some of the models and the kind of the assets on the TV show, were you able to kind of utilise some of those to kind of cut corners? But I mean, how does that work in terms of going from a TV to film as well?
Well, it was one of the appeals, clearly, that we had a lot of the assets made in terms of the look and feel of the world. We knew a lot of the main characters, and we were able to kind of take that and expand it out. So it definitely helped us, and it helped us get where we are as quickly as we are, but it also presented some enormous challenges for our team back in Bristol. Our production designer and so on really had to think about how do we build a world in the city that feels like it belongs in the world of Mossy Bottom, and I think they did a fantastic job of that, but when you look at it, it's very, very different to the world of Wallace and Gromit. Strangely, it's a much more modern take on that kind of world.
When you're writing the film and making it, how aware are you of the fact that there is an audience outside of the UK? Because obviously there's about 70 countries, I think, or more than 70 countries who show the TV show.
170.
Sorry, it's 170.
Yeah, over 170. I can't name them all. Don't ask.
Start now. Yeah. So, but how aware are you of the audience outside?
To be honest, we're barely aware of the audience outside the room because there is a thing where, and I mean, where when you're writing, even on something like Shaun the Sheep, you're writing for yourself, and that you want to make yourself laugh and tell stories that you're interested in, and you don't dumb down. That's kind of rule number one now. When you're making family movies. So I guess we don't ever consciously think, oh, here's a joke for the grown-ups, here's a joke for the kiddies, here's a joke for the French, whatever. Here's a joke for people in Alpha Centauri. We kind of like, you just basically get stuck in and do what makes you laugh.
Yeah, I have to say, from a producer's perspective, it's slightly, I would say something slightly different, because I think when you're in the room working on the story, I agree with Mark. You're worried. You have to focus on what you like. If you don't trust your own instincts, and those are the people around you, you're not going to make a film. But obviously, one of the reasons we're making a film, and one of the ways we finance these films, is by making the play everywhere. So I think that's just the lovely juxtaposition of working at Aardman, is that we have this kind of very definite voice the company is known for, and that kind of slapstick comedy, but we're lucky enough that it travels around the world.
And when you were creating the film, was there anything when you were making it that you thought, actually for kids we can't do this, and had to be taken out, or was it pretty much what you'd expect at the end would be there? Or
I mean, I think there's we're all parents. I think there's things that you think that you want to put things in that you feel comfortable with as a parent and feels right for the genre and everything. So I don't think we would create those ideas. We would automatically and quite naturally censor ourselves. I mean, there are a couple of moments in the film which are like Bitzer, getting mistaken for a surgeon, which are quite dark, but I think we sort of felt we as long as we handled them in a kind of light-hearted way, we'd be all right. And so we're careful to make sure that it's family viewing, but I think it's just a natural process.
Well, I noticed in the credits that you'd put a bit about the sort of the charity that deals with people with memory loss or head injuries.
Yeah.
I mean, were there any concerns around depicting that?
There were actually, but also by coincidence, I'm actually a volunteer for Headway, not to make it sound like I'm some saint or anything like that. I do so much work for charity, but I don't talk about that. But I actually do some work for charity, and in my other life, I do a bit of volunteer work for Headway. So I knew about Headway, and Paul also has an experience of it. If I can speak for Paul, his mother's a doctor who's been involved with head injury. So we were chatting about it and saying, well, actually, the truth is that in the modern world, things that were like in the silent comedy world, you have people banging on the head with hammers and things. Now people don't think it's so funny necessarily. So even though we were dealing with that in a light-hearted way, we felt the storyline was sensitive enough. We actually approached Headway and said, you know what? Would you be interested in getting involved? Because we think it's something that could, as well as enjoying it and having a laugh, we can also maybe take it and use it to teach people a little bit about the serious side of that. And they were delighted. So we actually had a charity screening yesterday, in fact. And I just got to mention, can I just say a quick thing, which was a Q&A. We had a little time for a tiny Q&A there. I just want to give you a sense of the kind of questions we're looking for today.
So it's my information.
Yeah, it's for everybody's information. There was one 4-year-old boy who watched this film and then said, his question was, can I ask, have you ever seen a dog eat a banana? And the sad thing was I hadn't, so I felt I let him down.
Paul, have you ever seen a dog eat a banana?
Funnily enough, no.
What a great question, though, Justin.
Thank you very much. Now, you have brought some of the stars of the film along with you,
yes.
all the way from their home in Bristol, in a very, very precious locked metal box.
Yes.
So I think it's time now to unveil them, if that's okay. Who have you got with us? Wow. So this is Trumper, who's a brand new character.
That is Trumper. Mark is demonstrating his animating ability there.
Yeah, that's. I'm a complete. I can't actually animate because getting it to stand up is a miracle.
Can.
And then Shaun himself.
So
and
this is
Timmy.
Trumper, yeah.
There's Timmy. Timmy. See, normally, just to explain, you probably can't see this, but they actually often get tied to the set, so they're physically held in place when we're shooting them. So Shaun, as a two-legged character, actually doesn't stand up, and Timmy doesn't stand up very well either.
No, as you can see, yeah.
So they're quite tricky to do. So we'll use a glass.
I'm cheating there. Look there.
But it really helps you to kind of get an idea of the scale that you're looking at when you're making a film like this, because they're so small and intricate, aren't they?
They are. I mean, the sets that are built for that scale, it is like a magical kind of doll's house. You know, we've built, as you can imagine, city sets and sets around the farm and everything. And the skill of the set builders and the props people is absolutely amazing. Somebody did ask me actually, and this was an adult, asked me when they'd watched the film, did you shoot it outside? Because it looks some of the sets look so realistic, but it's
That's
all
very
done.
flattering, isn't it?
Yeah.
And in terms, I mean, the other thing that making a film allows you to do, I guess, is to actually get to know more about the flock and to give them all kind of individual kind of characteristics and stuff. And can you tell us about the decision to kind of both flesh out the flock, so to speak, and bring in the new characters like Stamper?
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, the flock. Interestingly, while the series was being made and continuing through the series, the flock shrinks and grows depending on how many characters were available. So anybody who's a real Shaun aficionado will know that. There have been lots and lots of different numbers of flock. But for the film, we actually sat down and physically decided, right, we're going to name all of these characters. So we knew a few already. Everybody knew Timmy and Shirley and Timmy's mum were the kind of defined characters. And then we gave each of the others characteristics and little stories. And then we had to develop a number of other kind of characters. So this guy, Trumper, obviously was a new one, and Slip, the dog that's in the film. So we spent a lot of time doing that and really thinking about it. And the way they were designed was that Richard Starzak, the other director, would sit and just sketch designs, and then the sculptors would somehow take that and turn them into these amazing 3D interpretations of his work. Because the drawings you saw on the end credits, those are some of the character designs.
I have to say, my absolute favourite, the pigs as well. If there was ever to be a pig spin-off movie, I would be there at the front of the queue.
Yeah.
All right, that's good to know.
You're not the only one to say that.
The thing about the pigs actually is they're very difficult to animate. They're actually made of plasticine. Which is unusual. Most of these are now cast in silicon, but they go back to an old way, and so they're actually they don't have a lot of movement in them in the same way these puppets do, because they have they obviously have a skeleton inside there which you can move around and stuff like that. I think the first thing is obviously the characters pre-existed. So Richard Starzak, he's also known as Golly. Golly had we had the TV series running. I think the first thing you do is because you talk, and it sometimes can be a bit odd to be at an Arbon story meeting, because we're talking sometimes heatedly about sheep and dogs and things, but we're talking about their emotional lives and what they would and wouldn't do as characters. So you first of all have to take your characters very seriously. And you discuss them if you like. You discuss the big ideas, and one of the first big ideas we had was, I think the first thing was when I came on to the film was to say that you can see Mossy Bottom Farm as a workplace story with a kind of boss, foreman, and workers, but it's also a family story about a father figure and maybe Bitch was an elder brother and siblings. So you start off by looking at what you've got, and then we said, well, if we're going to do a film, we need to take these characters out of their comfort zone and put them somewhere new and somewhere where we can have fun. So you sort of start to build out, and then you say, well, what about a city? And then you say, well, if it's a city, where would they go? What would happen to them? What were they doing there? So in a way, you ask questions, and you just kind of, and then along the way, you have things like very early on. Me and Golly had, we sat in his room in the happy early days playing the ukulele a bit and going. And we had cards, and we would just say, think of something like, wouldn't it be funny if there was a barber shop quartet? Bang, up it goes. So we'd have a set of cards with just ideas that would tickled us. And then we would have this other conversation about what the story might be. And then only 2.5 years later, we had a script.
Yeah. Because the other thing to say is it's true, Nick does sketch constantly. You sit in meetings with Nick and Pete and Golly, and they'll all draw constantly. And you can tell when they're annoyed because they'll start drawing pictures of you, generally.
There's hundreds of pictures of me, I just realised.
An awful lot of that. But Golly had lots of ideas, and the Panto horse is probably the best example of this, that we spent ages working on the story. And Golly kept saying, but I've got this idea for a panto horse. And he kept drawing panto horses. And Mark and I were saying, no more panto horses. And of course, at the end, we came up with this idea. We need something to get the sheep out of the city. And the panto horse came about, became the thing we needed. So, we found lots of ideas through Golly's sketches as well. And, so I think it's a bit of both, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, it's a kind of, there's no science to it, really.
Yeah.
Well, there's actually about 4 trumpers, different kinds of trumpers in different stages of distress. As you'll notice at the end of the story, his pants are out and everything, and he's got kind of like his glasses are broken, and in fact that has to be a separate model. So there's 4 different trumpers, and I think the process of from a character design to a puppet, which is then tested. So the animators will then do tests to see how it moves and everything. It's not that long, it's a few months, I think. Is that fair to say?
It was a couple of months, I think, from the kind of signed-off sketch. They do a sculpt, and then they'll move into kind of test puppets and kind of building it like that. And they talk about around 2 months on model making team. But then you've probably got another month of testing it and making sure everything's working. And then, of course, I think we had 8 trumpers. I'm looking at Mark. It's 6 to 8. No, I mean of the actual...
Oh, yeah, and you have different...
So you have multiples of the characters. Yeah. So when they make one, they have to work out, how to make multiples of it so they all look the same, which is, it's the process of actually painting them and things.
And you're saying some are silicon and some are plasticine still. So
these are all silicon.
These are all silicon. So Trumper is mainly kind of silica and various versions of that, but he has got plasticine mouth in here. And when you look closely, you can see the join. But most of them, are not plasticine. The plasticine's a nightmare to work with. So the pigs and the bull are plasticine, and a few of the other smaller characters.